Welcome, everyone, to the first virtual Newcastle Noir 2020 event. When coronavirus reared its very unpleasant head, we were, as you can imagine, extremely disappointed. The Newcastle Noir team and Newcastle Library that hosts us not to be able to host the festival. Just bringing all those people together, authors and readers, it just really, it was hard to get our heads around that it wasn't going to happen. But we gave it some thought, and we thought to keep that spirit going, that we'd like to at least bring you a taste of what was planned and actually what is to come, because the plan is that, all things being equal, this time next year, that'll be from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May, we will simply roll out that programme that we've got already prepared. Authors are saying that they'd love just to reprise that notion, so please, if you can, join us next year. But I hope that you're sitting comfortably. I hope that you're well and safe, and I hope that you're able to join us over the weekend for our 3 panels with the Northern Crime Syndicate, and then our 3 spotlight panels with those authors that we're finishing each evening in crime fiction celebration. My name is Jackie Collins, and I have the great pleasure of being the director of the festival. It's such an honour and a privilege to bring this thing together. But before we get into our conversation, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of a Northeast crime writer, Sheila Quigley, an iconic writer here in the Northeast, someone whose work spoke volumes of the Northeast identity and spirit. And whilst Sheila and I didn't always agree on many a political aspect, Sheila was always there to encourage and to support and inspire authors. So from Newcastle Noir, we send our best wishes and condolences to the family, and we say, Sheila, rest in peace, and may you be delighting those above with your stories. Smiler will forever be with us, as will your work. Sheila Quigley, everyone. So for our first panel, it gives me great pleasure to introduce 2 authors, 2 Northern authors, who it has been so much fun over recent years to get to know, and whose work is always a delight, an adventure, and one should never pressurize an author into producing more work. It's not fair. But for these 2, it's always like, come on, next one. So Robert Scragg, welcome.
Hello.
And Rob Parker, welcome, welcome.
Hello there.
Hello, it's great. Thank you so much for kicking the festival, the weekend off for us. Robert, I wonder, I'm going to ask each of you just to give us a brief bio for anybody who's not familiar with you. Who are you? What got you into crime fiction, and why are you here?
Robert Scragg, Northeast born and bred, and I am the author of the Porter and Style series. So I've been a published author for almost 3 years now. Yeah, almost 3 years. And actually, it's always great fun to come and have a chat with you, in particular, Jackie, and the Newcastle events, because that was kind of where things started to move forward for me at the Newcastle Noir Festival. Probably, I think it was 5, maybe 6 years ago now. So I've always been a massive crime fiction fan in terms of a reader, and I just used to continually get to that point where I was thinking, oh, maybe that happened, or maybe he did this, or she did that, and this is why, and that just inspired me to give it a go. And I came along to, I think it was the 2nd Newcastle Noir Festival, a great workshop that William Ryan and Barbara Nadell gave, and it was later that year that I started to get some positive feedback from agents and subsequently from publishers as well. So it's obviously it's my hometown festival, but it's always going to have a kind of a dear place in my heart for that reason in particular. So I've got 3 books out at present. The most recent this year is All That Is Buried, which is book 3 in my series. Set in modern day London. I was pretty much living and working down there at the time, albeit other stuff I'm writing now is migrating back up north. In terms of, you're talking about what we can churn out quantity wise, I've got a day job still at the moment, so I'm happy to go for a book a year, but if I can ever get to the point where I can write full time for a living, I'd love to see how many more I could churn out.
Brilliant. Robert, thank you for that introduction. It's beautiful. Now, Rob Parker.
Well, thanks for having me, Jackie. It's lovely
It's a pleasure.
Today. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Rob Parker. I'm an author from the northwest of England. I live in Warrington, which is directly equidistant between Manchester and Liverpool. And I'm the writer of the Ben Bracken thrillers, 4 of which are here. And I do some standalone stuff too, which is Crook's Hollow.
Can I just say, not that you're giving Robert book envy there, he very kindly held up one.
Oh, did he? Sorry. I was so concentrating on not dropping them. I'm so sorry.
Sorry, tell us.
I'm the author of a bunch of thrillers based here. Well, they're set all over the place, but no, I've been a crime writer for, I think, 3-4 years now, published since, 2017, so probably similar time frame, 3 years. Obviously, as any writer will know, that's just the tip of the iceberg for how long you've had pen to paper. So no, very lucky guy, very happy guy. Also, I'm a voice on the Blood Brothers crime podcast. I've got a film podcast as well called For Your Reconsideration. And like Rob, I'm a very, very proud member of the Northern Crime Syndicate.
Excellent, excellent. Rob, thank you for that. And we'll come in discussion about the Northern Crime Syndicate a little bit later on. What I would like to say is that I have heard from other members of the Northern Crime Syndicate that you two are known as the Naughty Twins, and I'd like to investigate that a little bit later on.
I think the two Robs has a bit of a ring to it, like 2 Ronnies type of thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. But where the 2 Ronnies, there's that we know that humour. I think the 2 Robs sounds a little bit more mischievous.
There is definite mischief, I think.
There is.
I don't know, Rob. I think we're getting an unfair whack here.
Well, you say that, Rob. I think anyone who's turned up and seen us at festivals may agree with the mischief part.
No comment, then, in which case.
Anyway, you introduced to your books, and what I'd like to do to start with is think about your protagonists. For Robert, that's a duo that you have, Port Styles, and for Rob, for you, that is Ben Bracken. And for anybody who has followed your books along, they will have seen how these characters have evolved from embryo. But I'd like to ask you, what do these characters mean to you? They're not just a name on a page, and they're not just a marketing possibility, I assume. So Robert, do you want to tell us what Porter and Styles, who are they and what do they mean to you?
So I mentioned before, it's a couple of years since I've been published, but like Rob, you put pen to paper long before that. And the first idea for the first Porter and Styles book, I think I wrote the first chapter back in something like 2007, 2008. And it just took so long to get to that point. They came after the idea, so they kind of popped up afterwards. And for me, they kind of, I probably didn't consciously think this at the time, but when I look back at what they've turned into now, they remind me, it gives me a similar kind of feel to some of the authors that I loved and still love to read, who have these duos that drive the plot forward, but it's about that relationship between the 2 of them. Because for me as a reader, I'm all about, it's got to be character driven. It can be a really good plot, but if the characters aren't strong enough, I just kind of lose interest a little bit. So what I was always aiming for is a character or characters that are going to not only grab you, but then sustain you through a series. Because I'm sure Rob will probably tell you the same. When you've got a series, you have to really work hard to keep that reader interest the further into the series you get. We're not all, Lee Childs and Michael Connelly's, that kind of thing. So it was really about making them relatable, I guess. I tried to steer away from a bulletproof detective who was alcoholic and 3 times divorced, and a bit too cliche. I wanted someone that people could read and actually empathise with what's going on. So Jake Porter, for example, he lost his wife in a hit and run a couple of years back, so he's still struggling to come to terms with that. You've got his partner Nick Stiles, whose wife is expecting. So you've got the kind of the flip side of that. Porter seeing Stiles' life going the route he thought his was going to, and what effect that has on their relationship, personally and professionally. And some of the reviews that I've had that have really meant the most to me have been the ones that have commented on the 2 characters and the relationship between them, and almost the banter at times. And then there's also been a couple who've come and said, like, when's the next book? I need to know what happens. I need to know what's going to happen between Porter and this character next. And that character who you did this with in book 1, are they going to come back? And that, for me, really, that's the ultimate kind of thumbs up for me from a reader, is because they actually care about the people you're writing, which, when you've just conjured them up sitting in an office like this, is no mean feat.
And I like what you say as well, that idea of they're not just there to solve the crimes. It's not that they're that vehicle, but it's that we should engage with them and know more about them, because then we're wanting to come back, if that next novel comes out. And yes, we want to know what grisly crime you've perfected, but we also want to know, what are these 2 up to? So you have that duo, but Rob, you chose to write this singular character, and if I might say, Judith O'Reilly's Michael North is the character at the minute that has my heart, but Ben is a serious contender. All right.
Thank you. I'm trying to convince Judith that Ben Bracken and Michael North should go toe-to-toe in their combined work. I would love it. But
awesome. You should write a crossover thing.
I know. I think those 2 could get a lot done, actually.
We could end up the Northern Crime Syndicate could end up being like a Marvel universe.
Yes.
Now we're talking. That's an idea.
Here. Well, you've maybe mentioned it elsewhere first, but
yeah, let's just keep that. If we can just keep that between us 3 and the however many people listen to this.
Yeah. No one heard that. Yeah. And now then, that means we're going to have to put Ben Bracken and Porter and Stiles in a locked room mystery with Chris McGeorge as well. Wow, that's going to be great.
I should put that to him on Sunday when we're discussing.
Please do.
Adam. Yeah. Yes, what will the location be? Anyway, I'm sorry.
No.
Please, tell us about Ben.
Right. Well, a lot of people, certainly my friends, when they read Ben Bracken, certainly his early things, said to me, "Are you just living out your fantasies on the page here? Of being a sort of a more very proactive, action-orientated, highly trained guy?" The answer would be always no, because his. I think you hit the nail on the head, Rob, with when you said evolution. We're not like Lee Child, where you can just, and I'm using that as an example, but I have to keep progressing this character. So in the space of the 4 books that have come out in the series so far, he's changed a lot, and readers have responded to that. But that's like that constant quest for engagement that, as a writer, you've got to go through. You've got to try and keep people entertained and not knowing what comes next. So romance was the first thing that I had to tackle with him. He was very much a lone wolf in the first book. Second book, my agent at the time was desperate for me to get him, with a romantic entanglement. And I resisted for as long as I could, because I didn't, life isn't just like that. It doesn't just happen. It's nothing that ever ends up with a neat bow. But no, certainly in the formative stages, the Ben Bracken character came out of, my grandfather was a commando in World War II, and I always had military aspirations of my own, but through all sorts of different reasons, mainly one being health, knees. I have very bad knees. I couldn't bring them to fruition at all. So I'd written this awful screenplay in 2001 when I was 18 about a crime network in Manchester, and I've got no qualms in saying it was appalling. And then we got to 2012 and 2013, and I got injured playing football, and I needed six knee surgeries, 3 on one, 3 on the other, and I was suddenly out of work for 18 months. So I took that that old screenplay and took all that sort of pent up, because I was frustrated at the time as well, and I lowered Ben Bracken into it. He sort of parachuted out of nowhere and fixed this whole screenplay up, and it became a novel, and he was the missing ingredient to that story. And yeah, so from there it was just, well, let's write another, and let's write another, and let's just keep going, and then you dig your heels in, because this could be my only shot at doing this. This is, you know, being a writer for a living, be a dream job. So you're just like, right, grab the bull by the horns and do not let go.
Can I just come in? I mean, thank you for anybody who's not been introduced to Ben. Thank you for that. You know, but you talk about grabbing the bull by the horns, because, you know, here are opportunities. Here's the moment. Does that pressure in a way ever make you fearful to put fingers on keyboard, pen to paper?
What do you think, Rob?
I think for me, so I'm at that kind of point at the minute. So we've kind of verbally agreed a deal for book 4, and I've got it plotted out. And I've been procrastinating for the last week now in terms of what chapter 1 should be. I've got 2 potential outcomes, and I probably feel more pressure now that I know other people that I'm not related to are definitely going to read it. Whereas previously it was my mum, my dad, my wife, and my in-laws. not that their opinion doesn't count, but now that I know that the people who are actually paying me to produce this are going to read it, and if it's not up to scratch, then they'll tell me in a very nice professional way. So there is definitely that little bit more pressure. Not so much that you kind of rabbit in the headlights and you freeze, but I don't know about you, Rob, I'm very much more aware of that impact I need to have. You know, I'm not just doing it on the off chance that someone might read it further down the line. I know that this one is going to come out. I think it's January next year it's slated for. Yeah,
I'd agree. I think certainly at the moment the stakes have never been higher, have they? You know, in that sense. But I don't. I mean, I'm still in that. Maybe this is, you know, some of the more experienced authors that you speak to, Jackie, might say something along the lines of, you know, that they do feel that pressure. But at the moment, I just feel like joy about it. I can't believe I get to do this. So I'm still really, really excited about it. So I, you know, this might become a question later on, I don't know, but I'm definitely not a plotter. I definitely pants my way through everything, and that means that every time I sit at the keyboard it's like a proper exciting ride. I don't know where I'm going to end up at all, so I've still got that rather this might make me sound very green. Yeah, I still got that very, very non-jaded approach to this at the moment.
No, not at all. I mean, like I know we've talked about this, and I plan things out more than you do. So I'll have a spreadsheet with 1 line per chapter, but it's literally just like a line to say, Rob jumps on a Zoom call with Jackie and Rob and chats about whatever. I'll then, when I physically start writing, I'll still sit there and I'll kind of like try and chuck myself in the room and think, right, so what's happening? Who's going to say what? And I haven't got all of that figured out. And I still get moments like I did just 2 nights ago where I was thinking about the ending of book 4. Then all of a sudden I thought, oh, what if that happened in that year? And you still get those moments of like, oh, yes, I like that.
Yeah. The eureka moment is like nothing else. It really is.
I hope that both of you continue, you know, as your career progresses and however many books you produce. I hope you always have that feeling of excitement as you approach a story, and that you never feel that you just have to do it again, but that there's a desire to produce. I just want to take a little step back a minute, though, back to the moment where you first seriously pitched your ideas. Robert, you spoke about, you know, your family reading things, but also to move beyond, so that people who would have, shall we say, a professional opinion on what you were writing. When was that moment? I think, Robert, for you, I think it was at Theakston's, was it not? You pitched there?
I had 2 that year that kind of stood out for me. That was definitely the main one. And that, for those who've either not been to the festival or not done the kind of the pre-festival day, which is Creative Thursday, which is the kind of the precursor to the festival every year. And it's basically a day-long workshop full of separate kind of sessions within that are all run by a whole huge host of authors that I would previously sat there and read. So the chance to sit in a classroom with them and hear them talk about, so this is how we develop characters, this is how we really kind of bring the setting to life and all that kind of stuff, it was just absolutely amazing. And then the final part of that was the Dragon's Pen, the pitch. So I had Mark Billingham was the MC, and then I had 2 agents and 2 editors there as well. And I don't generally do nerves for those who know me, but I was a little bit nervous, to say the least, when I got up, and I had my it was a laptop, and I was convinced you could kind of see the tremor as I was holding the laptop up to read it. I nearly didn't actually get a chance to get up, so it was names out of a hat, and I sit there for the whole hour thinking it's going to be me next, it's going to be me next. And then Mark Billingham said, right, we've got time for one last person. Let's pull the name out the hat. And he said, have we got a Robert Syndicate in the room? No one put the hand up, right? And he went to get another name. And I thought, excuse me, Mark, that couldn't be Robert Scragg, could it? And he had another look, got the paper out. He said, oh, yeah, sorry, mate, I should have put my glasses on. And I nearly didn't get the pitch. And everyone who'd gone before me kind of talked they only had 2 minutes. They talked and said, my characters are this, and this is a bit about my book. And I thought, do you know what? If I approach this as a reader, I just want to know if you like what I write. And if you like what I write, you'll want to hear more. So I'd timed the opening scene. And if I spoke like really fast, like John Barnes kind of fast without taking a breath, I managed to get the opening scene done in like 1 minute, 56 seconds or something like that. And I just said, look, I'm just going to read my opening chapter. Hopefully you like it enough to want to hear more. And then sure enough, I got 4 yeses and I got 4 business cards afterwards, which got them agreement to read the first 3 chapters. Of those 4 of them, 2 then the 2 agents wrote back and said, can we see the full thing? So that was where it really hit home for me that actually I might be onto something, because it wasn't my mum, it wasn't my dad, it wasn't my wife. And I even, to the extent, there's a chap who was in the audience 2 years later, was still talking to me at Stirling Festival, saying he remembers being in the audience that day when I pitched.
Oh, wow.
And he remembers the pitch, and he was so happy he got to read the book afterwards. And again, that was like, bloody hell, all right, okay. Obviously, I made an impression.
I tell you though, the bit that sticks in it for me, as well as the 4 yeses, is that thing of Shybairn's get now. If you'd not said excuse me, could that have been my name?
Yeah.
If you just took it that, somebody else with a name that could look similar to mine, it's not me. You know, we might not be having this conversation and everything in between. So
it's like sliding doors, Jackie.
Yeah, sliding doors.
And it's taking the bull by the horns, isn't it? You know, that's making your destiny what it should be. Very,
very much so. Yeah, taking those chances. And so, Rob, did you take the chances that were offered you? Was it a similar?
No, I've not got anything as fateful as that, I'm afraid. I did when I was still laid up with my knee injuries, I did the old tried and tested thing of approaching agents then, and that was the first time that I'd ever had any feedback of any kind. And I made a number in my head of the number I would approach, because I knew it was going to be tough. So I approached 250, just all over the place.
Wow.
It was like a relentless push to get these submissions out there. And of that 200, there was 200 didn't reply. 40 did get back and were very polite and said thanks but no thanks, and 10 got back and were absolutely dreadful. Like, one of them told me never to waste the time again. And and you can imagine that, what that would do. But the thing was, I'd self-published these first. So the first one had been self-published, and a couple of readers had said, yeah, we like it. And that, I put that close to my heart and held on to that. I didn't hold on to them telling me, that same one said, you've got no original voice, there's nothing about you that's interesting. And I thought, it made us, honestly, at that moment, it developed a superpower next to me. You can power up in a video game. Suddenly, I am impervious to criticism, and I absolutely love it. So, yeah, I've got, from that point, that was a very harsh wake-up call. But I didn't count the submissions from then. So 250 is where I know I stopped counting. And then soon after that, you know, I kept going and was eventually picked up. But that's almost then just the first raft, or the first experience of that kind of, because rejection is part and parcel of this. And if you're not going to put yourself out there if you're not going to put your toe in the water, you're not going to get any further. You're not going to end up in the pool, you know, if you don't do that. So, yeah, it was a very steep learning curve, but one I'm so glad about.
Thank you. Thank you. Definitely a steep learning curve. And I think the whole notion of you should try and bottle the spirit that you have, because, you know, the whole imposter syndrome that so many creative people suffer from. You say, I've got the superpower, and yet people can say what they think. People can have that opinion, because, you know, we can't please everybody with what we write or create, even if it's really, really good. But to be able to say, it's okay, I believe in what I'm doing, and I'm just going to keep doing it. So
I think as well, there's an element of that little bit of nagging doubt that never fully goes away, because even once you've got your agent, then you've got to try and get a publisher, and you get your publisher, and then you're still in a position to get that kind of negative feedback from reviews, from people who read it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a bit of a thing now, isn't it, Rob, with a lot of authors that we'll kind of share some of our favourite one-star reviews.
Yeah. They make my day. The one-star reviews generally make. I'm not saying go out there and blanket Amazon with one-star reviews just to make me happy, but like a really negative one-star review will more often than not make my morning than another one.
Yeah, I love the people who give a one-star review based on nothing to do with the content of the book.
Oh yeah.
Or the ones who say never really ordered this, or didn't turn up, never read it.
One star. There you go. I mean, sure, it's a one-star review for their own ability to use a computer or whatever, isn't it?
Well, the other fun thing to do that I've seen a lot of authors try and kind of turn it on its head is they'll look at the one-star review, and then you can see the other products that person's reviewed, so you can see what they rank as better than you. So, like, you know, I get a one-star review and find out that they value their new wheelie bin ahead of my book and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not competing with Lee Child or Val McDermott. I'm competing with a wheelie bin first.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for that. What I'd like, and again, it's really hard to condense all the questions that I've got for you, but I wonder, again, speaking of the tales that you tell, and I wonder if you can tell us about the cases or the situations that your characters get involved in, again, without giving too many plot spoilers for people who haven't had a chance to read you yet. But Robert, this dynamic duo that you have, what are the cases that they're involved in throughout the books?
So if we take book number 1, you can see I've got a lovely print that my wife gave me on the wall there, What Falls Between the Cracks. That centres around a 30-year-old crime scene that comes to light present day. And what I particularly liked about that was that they didn't have a load of DNA evidence. They didn't have mobile phone data, CCTV footage, all that kind of stuff. They have to start effectively from scratch, because what they discover is that this flat becomes known to the police. There is a severed hand inside the freezer, which that's no spoilers. It's on the back cover. And the lady who owns the flat can't be found. But not only can she not be found, she hasn't been seen for nigh on 30 years. And what they really can't figure out is why no one has ever looked for her or reported her missing. And that includes all of her friends and all of her family. So they're effectively starting 30 years behind the game to find this girl who may or may not be missing of her own free will. And the title's a bit of a play on words. Did she slip away through the cracks to escape, or was she given a bit of a shove? Sprinkle over the top of that a bit of organised crime and allegations of police corruption. So they're kind of fighting fires on all sides, really. And then through to the more recent book, All That's Buried, that's got starts off on a fairground. You've got a 7-year-old girl who goes missing. Porter and Styles are brought in to look for her, and she's part of a family that are more keen to hide secrets and facts from the police than they are to share, which, when you've got a missing 7-year-old to deal with, poses an awful lot of questions. And while they do discover some remains, whose remains they are, you'll have to wait and find out. But that's more kind of the tip of the iceberg, really. And kind of laid across that, you've got the whole kind of personal dynamic between the two of them, because it's not all plain sailing. Like I say, Styles aspects of his life that Porter thought he would have by now with his wife, but that's been kind of ripped away from him, and he's got this bit of an albatross around his neck because the person who or people responsible for his wife's death were never caught, and that's what kind of really drives him as well. And in terms of the kind of stuff I like to write, it's similar to what I like to read. I like to try and kind of keep you on your toes, and I'm not one for this, let's have a big banner of the most incredible twist you'll never see coming. But I just like to keep you guessing all the way through, to make you try and formulate your own ideas the same way that I used to and still do as a reader. Think, what if? And it's all driven by those what if kind of questions for me. And really leave you kind of wanting more, not only in terms of the case, but the character. Like, how's this going to work out for Jake Porter? Has he got a hint of a personal life? Has he got a future in the force? He's linked to potential corruption in some cases as well. So it's all those series of what ifs that hopefully kind of snag you in as a reader.
Thank you for that. I'm going to come back and ask you a question, especially on the most recent book. But that notion of what a character gets involved with. Rob, you have some very interesting social, moral questions that run through those books. Can you give us a flavour of the kind of issues and escapades that Ben gets tied up in?
Yeah, I think because Ben Bracken isn't initially in the series, isn't affiliated to any law enforcement, you can make him do whatever you want. So it means that I really consciously try to make each story, each novel, a complete departure from the one prior to it. Even if it means I've got a great idea, like for at the moment, I had a great idea for number 5, and then I thought, hang on a minute, that's too similar to 4. We've got to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So, the issues and themes of responsibility are something that I'm preoccupied day to day myself. So both Rob and myself were both fathers with young children, and that element of responsibility is something that informs every single decision that I will ever make, and that every father, I'm sure, feels the same, and Rob would be no different. So taking that into a fictional setting, if that character doesn't have children, what if he didn't feel that his duty was done? And that's, one of the things that I set up with Ben Bracken was that, and this is no spoiler, that he was unfairly dismissed from the army. And what if he felt like his time of service wasn't over, but he had no outlet for it? And a lot of this comes back to, in the village I grew up in, 3 of my friends went to Iraq and then Afghanistan, and they came back so different and managed their experiences and what they were going to do with themselves after that in entirely different ways. And it's like there was no guidance for them. They were really adrift for a while. And it's something that definitely made me think, wow, that really is something that. And it got me thinking about my own grandfather, who I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So the military was always something, and the responsibility of military, and the fact that sometimes in the military you are just a number. You're just sent out there to do a job. And I know certainly my grandfather might have felt that at certain points, despite his overwhelming desire to do what was right for his country at the time. So that is definitely something I was interested in. So in the first one, if I can just put that on the top of whatever it is that I find exciting at the moment. So the first one, he tackled organised crime. The second one was I really don't want to give too much away here, but he was asked to attend a plane crash off the Devonshire coastline to retrieve an item that was there. Third one, he was in exile in a sleepy little village in Norfolk, mainly because I wanted to find out whether I could write a boat chase when there's a speed limit on the Norfolk Broads of 4 miles per hour. So, that was really the secret motivation there. And the fourth one was written last summer, which was all about really last year, the sentiment of the country was just all over the place. The national atmosphere was so strange. And I thought, Ben Bracken might be a good vehicle for me to sort of explore how I truly felt about it. And I had a blast actually, and I learned a lot about myself doing it as well, you know. So yeah.
I love that. So, you know, I usually ask authors, you know, what kind of research have you done looking into, you know, to be able to create your stories? I dread further conversations about things like that. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you, and thank you, Rob. You mentioned about Robert, in your latest book, the idea of a missing young girl. And I wondered, and both of you've talked about being fathers, and I just wondered to what extent, when you were, you know, writing the novel, as a father, was it more painful, do you think, to write that kind of issue?
I don't know if I would say painful. I was painfully aware of how emotive some of the content was going to be, and I can't really say too much without giving away any spoilers of that particular bit. But you know, I think wherever there's children involved with any kind of crime, you're always going to kind of tug on the heartstrings a little bit. But I think at the same time, that's one of the areas that really is such a rich vein for crime writers is that notion of family. What goes on behind those doors, what families are willing to share, not even just with police, but with each other. And it leaves so many little dark corners for you to explore, I think, as you go throughout your book. So as much as I'm aware that it's, and I think I've dealt with it in a way, hopefully, that you wouldn't need any kind of trigger warnings on the cover. But it also, because it can be such a compelling kind of notion of something is potentially happening to a you know, kind of defenseless child who can't stick up for themselves, it hopefully is enough to kind of again really hook you in and drive you on and think, like, you know, what's happened to them, who's to blame, what's the motivations, and you're rooting for a positive outcome, but at the same time you think, well, it's a pretty dark crime book, I'm not sure that's going to happen. And it just keeps you kind of wavering on the edge of, like, you know, which way is this going to fall?
Thank you for that. Sticking with the notion of young people, Rob, I read that you work in schools across the Northwest. Yeah, do you go in and do creative writing? What kind of thing have you involved with?
Yeah, well, I was given. It started off. I was picking up my daughter from school. She's just at school. She's 9 now, and I think she was 6 at the time. And one of the other parents picking up said, "Would you come in? I'm having some trouble with an English group of mine," and it was a high school English group. And they just, you know, they've never met a writer. Would you come in and talk to them? And I said, of course I would, you know. And I went in, and I was just amazed. I mean, this is, I work all over the Northwest, but my priority has always been to go to as deprived a school as possible. And I hope that comes across in the right way. But if you know, some schools get a lot of opportunity and some really don't. And if you're not getting opportunity, they're the ones I want to go to. Because young people, certainly in the Northwest, and I would say it's right across the country in areas that are similar, do not believe that the written word is something for them, that it doesn't offer anything to them, whether it's writing or whether it's reading. They just don't believe it's something that's applicable to them. So for me to come in, I bonded immediately with them, because suddenly that barrier was broken. I wasn't some stuffy guy who, you know, lives in a library, although looking at this it's ridiculous, but yeah, I'm only adhering to that image at the moment. But you know, so to have someone a bit younger come in and have a chat with them was great, and we really got going, really got them writing. And I think what I learned as well is that I broadened it out, and then I got invited back a few more times. I broadened it out to going, you know, I'll go anywhere, you know, and speak to anybody about this topic. So I've been in and talked about writing to 4-year-olds up to, you know, adults. And then I developed this idea that you could do a writing, like a workshop, very simple writing workshop, because it became so apparent to me that so many children, so many young people are focusing on, you know, things that, you know, this is probably a controversial thing to say, but things that might suck the joy out of writing. You know, whereas writing was always for me just, you're writing a story. Yes, isn't stories amazing? You're creating that. How exciting is that you can sit there and make something up? That was always intoxicating to me. But I was in front of a group of 6-year-olds not long ago, and I said to them, what's in a story? Let's keep it dead simple. What's in a story? And one of them said, compound verbs. And I'm thinking, and the teacher said to me, I know. And while that might tick boxes from an academic perspective, the kids in the class had no interest in writing stories whatsoever. They were just interested in box ticking certain grammatical points. So certainly I go in there and try and make it really, really simple, just make it about story and nothing else. Usually we build a character and then a story will pop out of the character, because that's always the way, isn't it, really? You make an interesting character and a story about that character will just pop up naturally. So no, I'm really, really lucky with this, and I know that at this point in time it'll be the most important thing I ever do with my life, actually, is to go in and work with these children. So yeah, it's nice to actually get the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important, because the idea, I wholeheartedly agree with what you say about the written word and creating our own stories and what that can mean. So thanks for that. And I wonder, Robert, I think this is a really good moment talking about the powers of stories and how they can help and change. You're involved with a compilation of stories, are you not? You mentioned it before.
I am.
Tell us about that.
So it actually came about. So there's a WhatsApp group called Criminal Minds. There's a chunk of us on there, and it first came out last year. It's a group of authors, and not all of whom I've even met face to face. Some I've not actually met in the flesh. But there's the core group, part of the group that I have. There was this notion of let's all get together for a lunch before Christmas, which sadly it was down in London, so I couldn't make it because it was a bit of a hike, and I already had plans. But it kind of grew from there. And it's just a really kind of supportive, funny, kind of free space to chat, whether it be about writing or other stuff. And one of the members, Victoria Selman, came up with the idea of actually, there's enough of us here. Why don't we, who would be up for doing an anthology, a charity anthology, short stories? And it turned out there was 14 of us who then put our hands up and said, actually, yeah, why the hell not? Let's give it a go. And it's gone at such a pace from there. Not only have we identified who wants to contribute, we've suddenly got cover art. Next thing you know, we've got some nice gifts for social media. Next thing you know, a huge thing from my perspective, because it's an author who I really like and respect his work. Alex North, aka Steve Mosby, has written the foreword for us. He's a big advocate of Samaritans, which leads me neatly onto who this is all in aid of. So this volume that's coming out, all proceeds, all author proceeds, are going to support Samaritans. The book is called Afraid of the Light. You can see our lovely cover there.
I love that cover.
All 14 contributors, and it's just
beautiful, yeah.
It was only last week that I got the chance to actually read my other fellow contributor short stories. And honestly, I'm slightly biased, I know, but it just works so well for me as a collective. You've got this, it's kind of nice, easy to dip in and dip out of if you don't want to read them all in one go. I think they average about 3,000 words each. And there's just such a range in there. I won't spoil anything for you, but there's literally something for everyone in terms of your taste when it comes to crime fiction.
It's wonderful. And that's going towards Samaritans, yeah, supporting Samaritans. Excellent. Now, I can't let more time go by, I hope you don't mind, before I ask you about the phenomena that has become the Northern Crime Syndicate that you're both involved in, which is absolutely fabulous. Just to set off, let's talk about how you got involved and what it means to you, and what kind of things are you involved in. So whichever one of you would like to take it away.
Oh, I mean, it's a lot of fun, isn't it, Rob?
It is, yeah. I guess in terms of where it started, credit for that goes to Judith O'Reilly, who first suggested it last year. I think it was at Harrogate. There's a couple of us already knew each other, so myself and Judith and Chris McGeorge and then later Adam Peacock had all met to varying degrees at the Durham branch of Waterstones for Fiona Sharp's book club.
Yeah.
We'd appear there as authors. We go there and just sit as a member of the crowd when we can as well. And then obviously I met Rob on the festival circuit, and then connected with Trevor as well. And as soon as Judith suggested it, I thought, yes, why haven't we thought about something like this already? And I think for me, the benefits of having something like this, it's not just about let's all help promote each other's books. It's genuinely a group of people who I would class all of them as friends. They're not just people who I'm trying to get to click on retweet and try and sell an extra book or two. They're the same people I'll stand and drink at the bar with on a weekend at a festival. We're all at a not too dissimilar place as well, I think, aren't we, Rob, in terms of our career? So you were published 2017, I was 2018.
Yeah.
Trevor's is newly out this year, Man on the Street. Chris McGeorge has got 2 books out. I think his first one came out 2 years ago. And same with Adam as well. I think Adam's first book came out, was it last year or the year before?
It's the year before, I think, yeah.
So for me as well, it's an opportunity to learn alongside, kind of learn the almost the business side of it. At the same time as some people whose opinions I trust and I value, and if I'm struggling with something or I kind of feel a bit lost off, I can pick up the phone or send a WhatsApp and go, "Hey guys, I've just had this to deal with. Like, what do you think? Like, what should I do?" So it's almost like a bit of it's a business circle, it's a friendship circle, it's a self-help group. It's a good promotional tool, and I think it's a good opportunity to shout out about Northern crime fiction as well. It goes wider than just the 6 of us. We've talked already and not had a chance to do it yet, but around getting guest authors on to some of the events we do. Because I'm sure Rob will say the same. We're absolutely all for giving a voice to as many Northern crime writers as we can get, really. Absolutely.
I couldn't. The only thing I would add to that would be paraphrasing you, Rob, because you absolutely nailed it there. Like, this group is, it's a group of friends, really. I think now who I think inclusivity is something that's very much a cornerstone of what we're about, and championing the North, I think, in a writing sense, for sure, definitely. But no, it's been such a great thing to be involved with. I confess I was stood with my friend here, Rob, at the bar in Harrogate when Judith said to me, "Can I have a word with you?" And we went outside, and I couldn't believe I'd been asked to be involved in this group. So it was a really lovely moment. I remember it like yesterday, when she said, "Coming up outside," So it was just great, really, really good. And yeah, I think we gel as well. We gel, but you're right. There's a sounding board there immediately. So I needed some advice recently, and Rob's been amazing with that. And other members of the group too. What do you think about this? Because there's no instruction manual when you get involved in this industry whatsoever. And you've just got to sort of like keep your head above water. There's so many amazing people in this industry as well. I've got to say, it's one of the most inclusive, if not the most inclusive industry. Certainly, it is certainly the most inclusive place to work I've ever worked in, hands down. It's been brilliant, and the most supportive. So I can't really add anything there, Rob. You sort of nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, we've only done a couple of events so far collectively because of COVID. We had more face-to-face stuff planned, but we've put a couple of live and pre-recorded sessions out there. But it's becoming as much as anything about just having fun and having a bit of banter with each other. And we've got the kind of the next iteration of that, which is Rob's brainchild, could either be the making of all of us, or it could go hideously wrong. This notion of writing a crime story live during one of the events.
And people can have a look at that, because you tried on Thursday night, did you not? Have a go at that. Yeah, is it recorded? Can we see?
So the first attempt at that was 28th. Yes, it's recorded. You'll be able to see it either if you pop onto our webpage our author page on Facebook, Northern Crime Syndicate, or on Twitter, and we've got a YouTube channel as well. The recording will be there for you to judge us.
I think we like a challenge, but I was thinking, certainly, let's think outside the box a little bit. And I thought initially, like, if I can do a writing workshop with 35-year-olds, I can definitely do it with this 6. So, you'll have to tune in to see how we got on, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely think, but it's a beautiful sight to behold. That's out there. People should definitely get in there. Now, I have more to ask about your work, but seeing as we're in the circumstances that we're in, I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking a little bit of our session together to think about lockdown life, and how it's been. And somebody, um, and it's meant for a different set of authors, but I think it's a fabulous question, and I'm putting it to all the authors who are appearing in this mini festival. And it goes like this: you are locked away, as we are, and you are allowed to have with you one of your the minor characters, but it has to be somebody that you've created.
So I'm locked away like now, and
Yeah.
so I've just got to imagine where I am, and I've got one of my characters here as well.
Yeah, and you're allowed to have your family with you as well.
Oh, I'm from, right, okay.
Yeah.
Go on, Rob, I'll let you go first.
Okay, in the fourth yeah, thanks, Rob. In the fourth Ben Bracken book, I created this chap who, and I created him like I create a lot of the characters, which you'll have seen if you watch the story building session we did with the Northern Crime Syndicate. In that, I start by just asking questions and answering off the top of my head, and this guy came out like that. So he's a Maasai warrior who's now a detective in Manchester, and he refuses to go anywhere without his flip-flops, and he's got a white Range Rover, and I just think he's dead cool, and he's way cooler than I'd ever be. He's so good, but he's got such a nice take on life that I think would be positive to have alongside me during these testing times.
Okay, so you would have the spirit of cool to keep you going.
Yeah. Detective Okpara is his name.
Yeah, beautiful. And for you, Robert, who would be there with you and your family?
I think I would probably, at the risk of making a slightly more unconventional choice, I wouldn't go with my main guy, Jake Porter. I'd probably go for his partner, Nick Stiles. I think Stiles, if I'm being honest, has got a bit more of a sense of humour. And I think what I love about him is he's got more layers to him, I think, even than I give him credit for at times. He's like the kind of the crutch that Porter leans on without realising that he's leaning on him. And yeah, I probably see more of myself, I think, in him than I do in Porter, just in terms of kind of the way that he deals with situations. So I think he and I would probably would get on better if it was like a several months lockdown. We wouldn't argue as much as I would with Porter.
With Porter, definitely. So a sense of humour and someone to rely on you'd have with you. Wonderful. So my next lockdown question, and it's a little bit more personal about reality, is there anything that over the last weeks you found out about yourself that you didn't know about beforehand?
Oh, this has got an element of therapy to it. I like it.
Ask in the bill when we're done.
Yeah. How about you take this one, Rob?
Oh, you're too kind. I think, to be honest, so I've been. It's been a really busy year for a number of reasons. So I've still got a day job as well as the day job and the writing. I'm also doing a kind of a part-time degree to help out with the day job. So time's been a bit of a short commodity, or a rare commodity. And I'll often sit there and say, oh, do you know what? I haven't had time to work out today. I haven't had time to write today. I've had other things on. You know, you obviously prioritize things like the kids and my wife. But actually, I've still got through quite a few box sets on Netflix. I was just sitting reflecting on that the other day, thinking, do you know what? I've blasted through like 5 seasons of Justified. I'm watching Ozark. I watched The Good Place, and started totted up. So I think I've kind of been lying to myself for a long time in terms of how much time I really could put to things if I need to. And I sit there and say, oh, I'm going to pick up the guitar again. That's gathered dust for 2 years. I've not had time. I've had the time. I'm just choosing to do other things with it. And I think not having the ability to go out and do other stuff and spending more of my time in the house has made me realise how much of my time. And I think it's probably just because after a long day at the day job, it can be hard sometimes to motivate yourself to crack out 2,000 words. And I've probably taken the easy road out more for the last few months, I think. So I've found out that I'm a big fat liar to myself, and that and that I just need a bit more discipline.
Especially where time's concerned. Yeah, okay. Next time we meet face to face, I shall ask you if you cracked that. But yeah. Rob, what about you?
I think I've learned two things. I think one is that I can now write through anything. Not anything, but you know what I mean. Like I can't be precious about what. It's not like I can have the right temperature in the room, right? It's got to be just right before I can write. It can't be like that. It's just you've got to take every second available, But if there's noise, if there's screaming, because now obviously all the kids are at home, etc. Because I'm convinced that when this comes out, when you can hear this, you will hear my children at some point. There was a tantrum about juice about 5 minutes ago, which I'll be amazed doesn't come across. So I think I can write through anything now, but also it's that I need to be better at separating work and no work. So a lot of the time I'm still, once I've finished writing and I clock off and I go and spend time with my children, I'm still there. I'm still writing in my head. The subconscious is still working away on it. And I need to be a bit more definite of no, cut that there. This is family time now. Usually that's not so bad when they're at school and then I see them and it's like, yay, come on, give daddy a hug, that kind of stuff. Whereas we're all together all the time now and the lines are all blurred for me a little bit. So I need to be better at it. So I suppose there's a positive there, a positive about being able to write whenever, but a negative in how I separate work and home, the balance.
You're right, Rob. It is hard to switch off sometimes. Like even yesterday, so we live quite close to, there's a big cemetery that you can go for your daily walk through. And even yesterday, I'm kind of walking through there. Got one of the kids in the pushchair, Jake's running around, and I'm tapping into my notes app on my phone because I saw an interesting name on a gravestone that I want to use as a character.
Never stops, does it? You can't turn it off.
Yeah, I think that's occupational hazard where writing's
Yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah, I think you might be right.
And you just gotta go. Okay, so I thank you for indulging me on the lockdown questions. I'd like to sort of start to finish off our discussion, but I know it's going to take us to some exciting places by talking about what next, because it's plainly clear that you both write that you have these protagonists. I would like to think there's a lot of mileage left in these guys. We're not done yet. So, Robert, you were mentioning the fourth book is there. Are you allowed to give us any spoilers of what Porter and Styles might be up to next?
So there's two main threads that run through book 4, one of which would absolutely spoil the end of book 3. So I can't say too much on that front. The other part, though, actually, is it's not a million miles away from a similar kind of theme to what Rob's touched on in his book, Till Morning is Nigh. It's that notion of, this kind of tide of nationalism that certain parts of our political system try and whip up, the likes of Farage and Tommy Robinson, that kind of stuff, and the effect that can have and what that can spur people on to do in what they think is the name of a good cause. Mm-hmm. So there's an element of that which I'm hoping is I can handle in a sensitive kind of way, because again, it's a very kind of emotive issue. The other big half of it, like I say, picks up literally from where book 3 leaves off. So that would be a massive spoiler for that.
It's a massive spoiler, but I do love the notion that you're going to take us on from where you left us, because where you left us was great. So it's lovely. And again, the notion of tackling issues that in everyday life can be difficult to broach or difficult to discuss, but I think through fiction, and particularly through crime fiction, providing a space where we can consider that kind of thing. So thanks for that. And Ben Bracken, what are you doing with him next?
I am approaching the end of the first draft for Ben Bracken 5, which Just before we got on this call together, I got off the phone with my publishers, who said that I can mention that it's called The Watchman, and it's going to be out at the end of this year. I'm excited. I've had an absolute blast writing this, an absolute blast. Again, doing something totally different. I thought we'd take Ben Bracken to America.
It's wonderful. I'm heartened by all that is happening for your writing, for both of you, and I'm so heartened by the concept of the Northern Crime Syndicate, and not only, you know, authors telling fabulous stories, but authors being so supportive, and authors finding ways of reaching readers and other authors. You know, we need more of that kind of spirit in the world. I do have one last question, and I hope it's okay. And it's not to do with writing.
Yeah.
What?
You've got a mischievous twinkle in your eye as you say that.
I know I do, don't I? and you know, I do think not doing this in front of an audience, sometimes it feels really strange, because to have that vibe from the audience, but I'm feeling mischievous and twinklesome. And it's, you have an image, Robert, behind you, you have an image of a boxing ring there. Yes, there it is. Viewers, have a look at that. And I know that you both box, I think, do you? Yeah. Have you boxed together? I mean, I'm thinking, you know, authors that share writing together beat seven sorts of what's it out of each other.
So we haven't. That it nearly happened in the sparring context, so didn't it, Rob? Because Rob came over. When was that? Was it last year?
No, it was January. Just
January. So I and a couple of friends of mine have signed up for a charity boxing event, which was due to happen in March. It's now postponed till whatever. Rob was training for a similar event in Manchester. He was due to be fighting on Friday the 19th of March. I was due to be fighting on Friday the 20th of March. So we were going to try and watch each other's fights. But he was also due in the Northeast. And I'd said, well, you're there on the Saturday morning. I'm training Saturday morning. Bring your gloves. Come on over. Rob ended up getting absolutely hammered on the Friday night and didn't make it over. So make of that what you will.
No, Howard Linsky, our good friend Howard Linsky, had me out rather late of an evening.
Well, Howard is a common denominator in many nights.
He is a bad influence.
I was going to say he's a great supporter, but bad influence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do hope that when we are able to be back together in the flesh, I hope that you two are able to have that sparring match.
Yeah, no, we really want to. The only thing I'd speak for, I don't know whether I'm going to speak for you here, Rob, but the only person I won't touch is Tony Kent. I'm going nowhere near Tony.
Yeah, I wouldn't fancy my chances.
Yeah.
But no, I think, Rob, as far as we're concerned, it'll be like that scene from the end of Rocky, you know, Rocky and Apollo. Ding, ding.
Yeah. Yeah, whether we could get through it with a straight face would be something else, I think.
So, viewers, Robert and Rob, thank you for our time together this afternoon. Porter and Stiles will be back with us in a fourth book, and Ben Bracken will be back with us in a fifth book, which is wonderful. Wish you both the very best with the Northern Crime Syndicate, and thank you once again for appearing this afternoon as part of the mini Newcastle Noir 2020. All the very best, and thank you.
Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.